Welcome to Heald Law Academy, the place where you can quickly learn how to maximise the value of your businesses and safeguard your commercial and personal interests. Today I'm joined by David Dees, and we're going to discuss something that is high on the agenda of most fast-growing companies, getting the right type of investment, and why all offers of investment need proper scrutiny. So David, surely all offers of investment are really good news, right?
Not always, because it depends what strings are attached, and it depends on what the people offering the investment are really trying to achieve. Let me give you an example. I had a client who came in and said that she had got a fantastic offer of investment and that they were going to put money into the company and make it grow. And I said, what are you giving them in return? She says, well, I'm going to give them half the shares. Great idea, it could be a good deal. But when we looked at the paperwork, what was actually happening was that the investor was lending the money and calling it an investment and taking the shares for nothing. Of course, the outcome with that is that the investor has a big stake, possibly a controlling stake in the company, and the company still owes him the money. That's a funny kind of investment in my book.
It's not an investment ultimately.
It's not an investment because they're not taking much risk. The idea of the investment, of course, is to put money into the company that the company can use to grow the business. The benefit for the investor is the increase in value of the shares that they've subscribed for.
And that's usually the exchange. So someone will invest into a company and in return they'll get shares in the hope that those shares will increase because they've invested in the company.
That's right. It's called subscribing for share capital. So the owners of the company will look around for investment and they will issue new shares to the people who put the money in. There may be a valuation that's required. It may be that the company is still worth nothing and the shares are only worth £1. But maybe in a year or two the company is worth more and they can actually have a premium on those share subscriptions. So they can get real valuable money into the company in return for those shares. It's fantastic for the owners of the company because that money is locked into the company. The people who've invested can't take it out again because they're now shareholders like them. So that's really the best way to go. Of course, there is another side of the coin to that, is that they do give up some level of control.
Now, you mentioned the example of someone who thought they were getting an investment, but it was actually a loan. Are there any other things to look out for when you're looking for investors?
There are indeed. You've really got to look at the minutiae of what they're offering, because often the arrangements that are being proposed are not as good as they seem. There is a clear distinction though between loans and share capital, so they do tend to divide into one or the other. On the loan side, you can perhaps start with friends and family. You then have banks, of course, that's the obvious thing. But sometimes investors in company will take a mixture of loans and share capital. You hear some jargon that you might come across it in the business press where they talk about mezzanine finance. This is a special hybrid where a loan could turn into share capital. For example, if the company's done particularly well, the person who's taken the loan with mezzanine finance might say, well, I'm going to turn it into shares. I've got an option to do that. It's done so well, so I'm now going to be a fully fledged shareholder. So you can see that there are lots of different types of loans and share capital. And when you get into the city, of course, it can get very, very complicated. But the principles are the same, even if you're starting out.
In that sort of agreement, though, wouldn't that would be a downside for the actual company, because presumably the company hasn't done well, hence they've got to give the money back. So the company hasn't done well and now they need to give the money back. That's
a very good point, and it's a so-called double whammy in that instance. But of course they might have had to borrow the money from a bank anyway. They ought to be managing that loan book just like they would manage the loans that they have with the bank. So really they've got to have factored it in. I agree it's not a good situation, because they obviously wanted that investor to turn the loan into shares. That was the whole point.
But people are willing to take these risks in the hope that it's the opposite.
Yes, indeed.
And how do you work out the value of shares? If you've got an investor coming to you and we were like, we'll give you 50% of the company, can you help with, estimating how much those shares will be worth? That's
a very difficult question. It's another whole topic, and it's not one that I personally normally get involved in. I understand the principles. Typically you get an accountant or a valuer to help you with it. There are lots of methods of doing it. You can have turnover valuations based on a multiple of the profits. People hear about EBITDA and such things. There's a whole world of knowledge associated with valuing companies, but there are people who can do it for a reasonable price. And if there's an investor coming in, they will want a valuation. So they might get one themselves, or they might ask you to get one so that they know what level to subscribe for.
And whilst that all might sound quite complicated, how easy is it for you to look through an investment and easily see what needs to be done, perhaps recommendations of any changes?
Well, I'm only a lawyer rather than an accountant. And on the finance side, of course, it's a question for the people who are investing the money. But the legal issues, sure, we can deal with. You need to make sure that there's a shareholders agreement for definite.
Yeah.
It might be one that you're going to put forward and say, I want you to invest on this basis. But typically, I think it's fair to say that a professional investor is going to insist on a shareholders agreement that they'll probably prepare. And you've got to look at it very carefully so you don't get tripped up by confusions about whether it's an investment or a loan or not.
So ultimately, don't think that all investments are good.
I'm afraid they're not. You've got to look at them very, very carefully, very critically.
Lovely. Thank you so much for your advice today, David. We hope that you enjoyed today's discussion, and if any of the issues mentioned are affecting your business right now, then simply call David on the number below, and remember to subscribe to all of our videos, and we'll send you news of seminars and other events where Heald Law Academy will be presenting. Bye for now.